Hello, I'm Mark from Productive Computing and Productive Computing University. Thanks for joining us in this lesson. Wanted to share with you a lesson excerpt from a larger course called API Fundamentals for FileMaker Developers. In this course, we start at the very beginning with your first API integration, and then we graduate all the way to learning and mastering the FileMaker Data API, which is where we spend more than half our time learning that particular API because it's fairly advanced, but also very useful. So in this lesson excerpt, you'll see me demonstrate a very basic integration with an API called Agify, which will guess the person's age based on their name. To learn more, visit us at Productive Computing University and enroll in the course called API Fundamentals for FileMaker Developers. As always, thanks for watching and enjoy the lesson. In this lesson, we begin our Level 2 integration with our first example from an API called Agify. So let me set the stage for this lesson and all the other lessons coming up, or most of the lessons coming up. I'll be providing a demo file which you can download below the lesson. And this demo file, as of right now, starts with just an empty shell and some preliminary information. But we will be building each API. You'll see me build it quickly in this file so that you can follow along and see the ins and outs of the scripting. This will give you everything you need to know to work with these simple APIs. As the demo file gets more elaborate, I may have to fast forward selected areas as I build things out instead of building in real time. But I think you'll appreciate seeing this come to fruition right in front of your eyes. And if you want to follow along just for fun, that would be a great way to learn. So just pause the video, catch up, follow along, build it as I build it. So you can start with this Level 2 API demo starting. And it should look just like this. Just a single button that really doesn't do anything and some preliminary information. Let me quickly go over the file itself, just so you can see what's up under the hood. If I go to Manage Database, we only have one table with 0 fields, so no schema. I do have one record, but you can see there are no fields in this demo table. Obviously no relationships because there's no schema. Then for the scripting, under the hood for scripting, we have a general folder. This is the script that we perform upon opening. I make sure that we have at least one record to work with. Go to the right layout, commit the records. We will use this later as we set fields, depending on how elaborate this demo gets. And then we have a subscript here that performs a center window so that the demo opens up nice and neat in the middle of the screen. Then we have a closing script. Both of those are script triggers that open and or close with first window or last window here under the script triggers under file options. Then we have an area for all the links that you saw for the marketing and information to find out more. That's down below here. These are just simple open URLs and an email. Then we have a utility area where we can reset the demo file upon distribution. This is something you can do if you want to start from scratch. You can just click reset and all the data will be blanked out. And here's that center window script that I already told you about. And then here is our Level 2 folder. This is where we'll be doing our building of things. We have this Agify API, which requests the approximate age based on a first name. So this is our first Level 2 API integration. What defines a Level 2 API integration in general is the fact that we are going to calculate the URL. So this URL starts with a base URL, and then we need to give it a dynamic name. A first name is what it's looking for here in the query part of the URL, where it's defined with a question mark. Then it wants more information on something unique to you or unique to your system. So we'll be using a global field here and setting this up in just a second. Then I have a quick link to the actual API and a quick description of the API we're about to integrate with. So if you go to the main website, you'll get to the agify.io website, and they have others. They have genderize and nationalize and all kinds of fun things. This is a free API, does not require an API key, which is why it counts as a Level 2 integration. The other aspect of a Level 2 integration is that you will get JSON in return, but everything in this section is going to be simple JSON compared to the sections coming up. And that way we can walk before we run. So every API is different, and sometimes the provider will let you test it without actually building any code. So if I put in Joe as a first name, for example, it will predict that Joe is 65 years old. Now, of course, this is not necessarily accurate, and it really is just a scaled data point across millions and millions of records of data that they've collected on people named Joe and their age. And then it shows here that Joe is 65 years old. So like I said, every API is different. You'll have to read about each one if you want more detail. But as you read through the documentation, and again, each one is different, so it's like a treasure hunt. Whenever you work with a new API, it's all about hunting for treasure, hunting for how do I connect to it? What are the requirements from a security standpoint? What's the syntax look like? What's the return going to look like? You can see here that they make it real easy, and that's why we start with these easy ones, because they are low-hanging fruit. Here is the base URL. This is where the query begins, but this is hard-coded to the word name. We'll give it a name, and we should get this response back, a simple JSON object with 3 keys and 3 values. Account, which is how many Michaels they have in their system. The name again to verify that it was Michael that we were looking for, and the age. Now, one important thing to know before we even talk about FileMaker is in most cases with these calls, if you just copy that to your clipboard, bring up a brand new incognito web page and put it into the URL, you will get the JSON here in plain text. So what's happening in FileMaker is not unlike this. It's simply going to a website and returning JSON, except that we're not using a browser, we're using FileMaker. And the script step we'll be using is insert from URL. Then we'll grab this returned data and put it in a global variable. Then we will parse it and put it exactly where we need in FileMaker, which makes this really, really powerful. It makes the whole notion of connecting APIs with FileMaker just mind-blowing when you think about the thousands and thousands of APIs out there and the different things we can do to connect our system to the world at large. All right, so let's build this. We know we need a request and a URL. So for that, I'll keep it simple. Let's just go ahead and copy this part of it. I know I need this part of the URL, so I'll just copy that to my clipboard. We'll go into the script that I started, and it really only has one comment here. So we can set the URL. How about that? Let's set the base URL. So we'll just set a variable to the base URL, and I'll just call it base URL as my variable name. And then I'll just put quote, and then I'll paste it. And of course, we don't want the word name in there because that's going to be dynamic. And for now, that's good. So now we've got our base URL. And then we need a field to hold the name, because wouldn't it be nice to either bring up a custom dialog or have the field there? So let me go ahead. I'll go into Manage Database, double click my table, and we'll create first name as a text-based field. Really, really simple. All right, now let's put that field on the layout. We'll put it right here. And then we'll put our button over here. Each one of these layouts will be slightly different in design, depending on what it is that we need. We'll put this up here for now. Doesn't need to be that big for a first name. And then we'll make sure that this button, I'll double click it and make sure it's calling the script Agify. It is. Okay, so now that we have a first name, let's give it an example. I'll put in my name here as the guinea pig. And we'll go back into the script, and this time we will set a variable to the final URL. Okay, and the final URL will be the original URL, so that's the base URL. And then we will combine it with the first name field. So we'll pull right from the first name field. Now, how do we call the API? That is fairly straightforward. We need a simple script step called insert from URL. Now, this particular script step is very innocent on the surface. It really is very simple in how it works. I have just really 2 or 3 choices, I guess 3 choices if you consider these. So first I have the option to set the entire contents. That will take whatever contents I might be targeting and replace all of them with the new information. And if I don't select that, it'll append my results to my existing content. So by default, that's select entire contents, and 9 times out of 10, that's what you'll want here. Now the target, that's simple to understand. That is the place that we are going to store the results. Okay, so we are going to store our results in a variable, and I will call it results. Then we specify the URL. Well, we already have a variable for that. It's called final URL. So I'll just put in final URL. Notice how you can automatically encode the URL if there were spaces in my name. Let's say, for example, that my query was more than just first name, or it was a first name that was 2 words, like Mary Beth. This would automatically put the URL encoding between Mary and Beth so that the space would not be seen as an invalid character. So let's put in the final URL. Then we have the option to verify SSL certificates. That's way beyond this level of integration because we're not even talking about security at this point. And then we have the specify curl options. Again, way beyond this particular section of the course. We'll talk about curl in level 5 and maybe 4. So this is where you can specify the payload of what you want to send to the API in a JSON formatted construct known as a payload. And we're not ready for that yet. We're still on level 2 here, so let's keep it super simple. Once we get our results, we'll want to do something with that. For now, let's just exit the script, and that way we can see the results of the URL while looking at the data viewer. And that's it. So let's go ahead. We've got Mark, we've got the request, we've got our script made. Let's open up Script Debugger and get ready. I'll make this a little smaller. We don't need it. And I will also bring up the data viewer so that we can see the results of our variables as they're being set. And here we go. And I'll use F6 on the keyboard to step into this script. And first we'll set our base URL. We like that. It's got the base URL, including the question mark. Then we will set our final URL, which takes the name and puts it and appends it to the base URL. So the final is right here. Then we insert from URL, check for any errors. There are no errors, and look at our results. So we have an error, missing name parameter. So now the moment we have an error and there's something that tells us this, it doesn't like the name or it thinks it's missing, and it's probably not that it's missing, it's that the syntax is incorrect. So let me go back to the API page and see what I did wrong. Aha, I forgot the name equals, which is a part of the, not necessarily part of the base URL, but part of the query part of the URL. So we've got some work to do here, and we want to fix this. So in this example, in some APIs, you generally want to consider your base URL truly the base URL, and you want everything in the query set somewhere else. It's likely going to come from some dynamic data from your system. In this simple example, I think we can kind of get away with it by saying name equals, because this is really the only thing we want to find at the moment. So I may end up eating those words, but for now, I'm just going to put name equals here and include that in my base URL, even though technically speaking, it's not part of the base URL. Okay, let me save that and we'll close this and we'll run it again. A little faster this time. There we go. And we have results. We actually have results. Count is the count for the name Mark, and the age is 61. Now, unfairly, it has tagged me as being much older than I actually am. I'm, as of this recording, 54, so maybe not much older, but it's sort of out of the ballpark. But let's not talk too much about all that. I'll copy this now. I want to copy this JSON and show you another important aspect of working with APIs, and that is the management of all the JSON. So we can use tools to help us with that. We can even use FileMaker to help us with that. Let me show you, while I have this script midstream here, let me show you how I can add to the watch window of our data viewer an expression called JSON format elements. And then I'll put in the results. And now that JSON went from a flat string all on one line to something easier to read where we can see the keys and the values in a list. So format elements, in fact, you've learned all of this already because you've taken the JSON fundamentals course or you know enough about JSON where you've got a handle on how these functions work in FileMaker. So as promised, I won't be spending too much time on the JSON functions. Just check out that dedicated course to learn JSON from A to Z, JSON fundamentals for FileMaker developers. Okay, now we are done with the query part and we got the results. Let me hide the API window for now, the website, and bring back our demo. And let's return the results to the user. Let's do it in the form of a dialog box. So we'll do a show custom dialog, and we'll use the field again, mark, space is approximately, space, quote, ampersand, and then we need to parse the JSON. So we'll do that here in a second. Let me just put a placeholder for that, and then we'll say years old. Okay. Now for our JSON, I'll just do a quick let statement. Let years equal, well, and then we'll parse the JSON. JSON get element. What is the JSON we're looking at? Results. And we need a key, and we're looking for age. So it really is that simple. So let's parse out the age. Just like that. Now let's fill it in here. And by the way, I don't need this in quotes. This is a field name. Don't want that in quotes, or we'll literally type demo : first name. So as approximately, we need the variable years that we called up here in the let statement to be the value for that. So I'll save that, run it, and there it is. Mark is approximately 61 years old. Okay. So that takes care of this lesson. We learned how to create a dynamic URL based on information from a field. We learned how to parse simple JSON and gather the results and put them in a show custom dialog box. Probably a good rule of thumb is to do a quick if statement and get last error equals 0 so that it only pulls up the results if there's a legitimate result to pull up. Or you could say if get last error greater than 0 or not equal to 0, then exit the script. Either way is fine, but good error trapping is always a good part, especially after this insert from URL script step. That's where 90% of your problems are going to come from. Is calling this either because you have the wrong syntax, you've built the wrong payload, you don't have the right security, or something is off by a single digit or a comma, and you're not getting good results from that insert from URL. Okay. Now, for extra credit on this lesson, go ahead and see if you can do this and add some more parameters to your URL. For example, if you want to include the country as appended to the word Michael so that it looks just for the country US, Michael's in the US, it will likely build a closer answer for you, an answer that's more true because you're now isolating it by country. So you would simply append to your URL a second part, which is country_ID equals, and then you can put in a country code. And notice how if you are going to use a country code, it says here's a list of supported countries and their code. So it has to be on this list or it won't work. So that's extra credit. Then as I scroll down, you have some extra credit if you want to estimate the age of multiple names at the same time. Here, instead of specifying name equals, it's name left bracket, right bracket, equals Michael, and name left bracket right bracket equals Matthew, and name left bracket right bracket equals Jane, then you'll get a more complex response. However, this is now an array, a JSON array, so that is going to take a little bit more to parse. And now you'll be tempted to put this in maybe a portal or something that can hold multiple values. We'll be talking about multiple values plenty in the upcoming lessons, so I won't go through any of that right now. But that is your Agify API for your very first level 2 API integration here in FileMaker. So if you're interested in taking the full course, API Fundamentals for FileMaker Developers, you can enroll at productivecomputinguniversity.com. Thanks for watching.